Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me in another of these monologues. And yes, there is going to be some sort of intermittent service on the channel as we find the land, finalise the land and get on the land and start going in that direction. But when I can, I will continue to do this channel. As I mentioned before, the English Couple, which is our sort of sister station, is where all our land stuff, and there will be very shortly a video in which we've looked at a piece of land that we're actually very excited about, although there is a number of issues that we need to attend with it. It'll be a lot of hard work, as you will see. Meanwhile, sometimes I sit down and have a read at some of the books on my shelves, and this one's called Vanishing England. It was published, when was it published? About 100 years ago, I think, originally, it doesn't actually say. This edition is 1994, but it came out around about 1920s, the original edition, by a chap called P.H. Ditchfield and an illustrator, Fred Rowe. And they went around England charting what was still here. The book's called Vanishing England because so much of our English heritage has disappeared. So many of these beautiful old buildings that once was, that tells the story of England and all the wonders that it was, has been replaced. And of course we know that in the 1960s there was a massive amount of pulling down and rebuilding in this modern style. And we saw, of course, brutalist architecture going up, which was really awful. And of course that's not lasted terribly long. We're pulling down those 1960s multi-storey car parks and tenement blocks and estates, aren't we? I mean, there are some still there. And of course then we saw in the 60s particularly a huge spate of motorways crashing through the countryside, devastating wildlife and changing the nature of the country forever. And as a result of more roads, more people bought cars and more people were touring around and exploring the area, buying up places, and we've seen urban sprawl, of course, with what now is these rather ghastly, in my opinion, ticky-tacky boxes that have been going up with mean windows, tiny little gardens, thin walls, thin timber, that you think actually in 50 years' time they'll probably be falling to bits. Whereas I'm in a Victorian house, which I know, of course, the Victorians had the same business with urban sprawl, but these buildings were a little bit more permanent and were made of brick, a little bit more natural materials in the environment that they were at. And of course we saw the railways. Anyway, the point of all of this and this one is that so many of these old beautiful buildings that were there have disappeared, and various other things. And of course we have to go to museums now to see this sort of stuff, to know what it was we once looked like. But it's not just that, is it? We've seen in more recent times village post offices, small town post offices, even big town post offices. Where I am, the big post office that was there for the whole town, and I don't know how many people are in this town, 100 to 150, maybe 200,000 people in the sprawling vicinity that are here. And the big post office, they deemed it was not, for whatever reason, viable, and they moved the post office into W.H. Smith's, which is, I mean, it's just madness. Is that because they say, well, people aren't posting letters, but we go to the post office and the services, the counter services, have very useful things for a lot of old people and a lot of people who want to stay in the analog system, who do not want to go digital. It's fine having a digital option. I have no objection to that. But do we have to have everything over in that way? Can we not stay in a digital, in an analog world for those that want it? We need more people to demand that, of course. If people were to demand it and say, well, I don't have a mobile phone, I don't use the apps, I don't carry sensitive information in a digital format. If you want to have my identity or you need me to prove myself, I'll do it in a more old-fashioned way rather than this way. We don't need this great rush to a digital thing. But as a result of this, we've seen so many things close down and disappear. And our country is vanishing in front of our eyes. So post offices have gone. The old milk round, You know, when people used to get the milkman coming round, imagine that if there were the farms were local, and that you could get your local fresh milk. Raw milk would be fantastic on a milk round, as it once was before. That would be amazing, with all the different supplies. You had the butcher, you had the baker making deliveries, or you had them locally, and they made those things like bread in the shops nearby. How many places can say they still make bread on there? You've got big supermarkets who pump out the scent of making bread, or they just warming up bread that's been made in a factory somewhere with no love and strange ingredients and all of that. What else has been disappearing? Of course, pubs are vanishing at an alarming rate. Pubs are just disappearing, and the pub was that and the church were the centre. They were hubs of the towns and villages, and people would meet and communicate and talk and discuss and be part of the communication. Youth centres, they were there for the youngsters to play all sorts of little games, whether that's darts or snooker or tiddlywinks or what's the thing, ping pong, table tennis, and all sorts of other games, card games, chess, drafts, all those sort of games and things that people could come and amuse themselves, listen to a bit of music, but again, discuss what was interesting to them, have a bit of a dance, meet each other, talk about what's going on in their community. We've changed things, haven't we? We now go so many distances these days to try and have our entertainment, or we go to these big cinema complexes and Hollywood is telling us what we should think about and what we should do, and television, of course, and the internet, and YouTube videos, of course, are guiding our thinking, and that's not a healthy thing. And this is why, partly why I feel it's important for me to withdraw from the YouTube thing on these discussion things, because I don't want to necessarily guide your thinking, but on the other hand, I don't want you to sort of head over to the cliff and fall off. I just want to sort of hold up a mirror and say, is this what we're going to really what we want? Do we not want to have a bit more self-reliance? Do we not want to have a bit more self-respect, be more responsible for our environment, our communities, our friends and family, and not be guided or cajoled all the time? Other things that have disappeared, of course, were those debating places, such as your town halls, your reading rooms, your assembly rooms, those sort of things. There used to be jumble sales every weekend. Now, maybe there are still jumble sales where you are, where people could jostle and what have you. The parks used to have events going on all the time, and you could meet and have a drink and a cup of coffee. I mean, admittedly, of course, there are still some parks that still do that. The park down here that I have has no cafe, there's no meeting place, there's nowhere to sort of really interact with people. Radio stations and local newspapers, they're the other thing that are missing from towns and villages. They're the sort of cohesive media voice, a local radio station or a local newspaper talking about local things. So if there is some salacious gossip, that's great. But if there is something the council are trying to push in that nobody wants, or a big business is trying to buy up a big area, or there's a skyscraper or inappropriate buildings, or a farmer is trying to do something on a big scale that's going to impact people, and people can talk about it, discuss it, and come to some form of resolution, that's surely got to be a good thing. But over time, these things have been slowly taken away from our society, from our environment. And I don't think that that's just an accident. It's just not market forces that we've all been pushed and herded into staying online and ordering from these big online retailers. I think actually that this has been all part of a big plan. Now, I know there are a lot of people, excuse me, picking my nose there. There are a lot of people who do not think that the government is bad, that the government is full of good people. There are people who do think that 5G is beneficial. or they don't think that the chemtrailing is going on in the skies, even though it's on the government website and the government are telling you they need to dim the skies. Even though it's there are still people who will go, no, that's not chemtrails, that's not weather manipulation, even though the government are telling you that's what they're doing. You know, on the one hand, you've got the government putting this stuff on their website, but not making it public. Well, not making it obviously public, although it is public if you know where to look. And then the MPs denying that all this is happening, which is ridiculous. And then we discover that the MPs have actually no remit. They can do whatever they damn well like. They no longer actually represent the constituency. So you think, well, what are they for other than just being down there to almost like ground generals to railroad whatever the government wants to do? The government should be working for us. That's the illusion that we're given. Of course, in actual reality, they don't work for us. They're there to push forward their agenda by pretending to be on our side. That is what's going on. But there are plenty of people who don't see that. And yet we only have to have a retrospective look and see how our wonderful communities are disappearing, that this is upside down, that this vanishing England is really happening, and it's been happening over 150 odd years. Yes, we have to have change. Of course we have to have change, but we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't have to throw the good things away and replace them all with synthetic, inferior, no good options. I mean, look at how everything is so expensive, and how in the old days, I mean, there was one guy who would go to work and one woman who would stay at home. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way round. It could have been the other way round. But now, just to have your head above water, everybody has to go out to work. There is almost no time for yourself. And what time you get, you're so exhausted, and they say, don't worry, we've got a screen of entertainment for you so that you don't have to think for yourself. All that responsibility, all that satisfaction, all that thriving, all that attempting to use the power that you have, they want to drain away. You may not believe me, and you may have your own opinion, and of course you're entitled to that opinion, but you can see with retrospective thinking what has happened incrementally, step by step, what's gone on in this country. And they've taken all these things away till the point that we are all existing in individual cells almost, connected to some mainframe computer, that they are poisoning our minds on a daily basis. That's why, for me and the lovely Julia, it's so important to break out of that, take back that responsibility, grow as much as we can, have a bit of freedom, be in nature and be free, no matter how hard work it is. Some people are saying, oh, Richard, you won't be able to do it, you're too old, and you know, it's too hard, you don't know what you're talking about. And maybe they are talking about themselves. I always feel that those people who are judgmental, they're actually talking about themselves because they're envious. They haven't got the gumption to get off their backsides and do it. They love just to sit on the keyboard and watch everybody else and have their opinions and what have you. That's fine. I don't care. They just water off a duck's back there. But for Julia and I, it doesn't matter, because we don't want to be in a 5G enriched environment with poisoned water and poisoned food and no community. But that's just us. You've got to make your decision. We've got to, I feel, rebuild this world from the ground up, from the people up, and put back a new England, in this case, for us, a new earth that is meaningful and has morals, ethics, and all of those, because that old world is just crumbling away, and I don't want any part of it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon, and hopefully we'll bring you some land videos in the next few weeks or months. Till next time, goodbye.